Hey everyone, I'm sitting right next to Cillian Lohan, who's the Vice President for Communications at the European Economic and Social Committee. He's kindly agreed to sit down with us and answer some of the questions that you from the community had. Before we get to your questions though, I want to make sure everyone's on the same page. So my first question to you would be, what is the European Economic and Social Committee actually?
Good question, because it's such a long name that it's hard to understand it sometimes. But when I found out what it was, I was really excited about it. So you have the big institutions that we all know in Brussels, the Commission, the Parliament, the Council, and then in the Treaty of Rome in the 50s, when they established all of this, they said we should also give a space for a voice for civil society. So for NGOs, for trade unions, for businesses to all come together. So that's what we do here. When legislation is proposed, they pass it through this house and we get a chance to give our input into it, and then we try and influence the process with that.
Nice. And we're meeting in the frame of the Your Europe, Your Say event. It's an annual youth event, but what else can you tell us about it? What is the event? What's its purpose? What's it trying to achieve?
So there's a couple of different purposes for it, because we don't have youth officially integrated into the committee, or at least historically we haven't had that. And I come from the climate sector, the environmental sector, and I saw that the youth movement there, they were really the drivers for change, making a difference, pushing it up the agenda. So we started to look at ways we could integrate their voice into this structure that's here. And when we were working with groups like Generation Climate Europe and the European Youth Forum, they were saying they wanted a way to get engaged, and they wanted a structured engagement. So we are, by being set in the treaties, as I said, we have a way to be already structured in our engagement. So we started bringing them in as advisors. We established some different round tables, and Your Europe, Your Say is just another one of those. It's a structured way to keep young people from all over Europe and beyond engaged with what's happening, and to try and make these kind of buildings and these spaces not intimidating, and to try and have real faces and real people here, you know, not just the kind of boxed up version of human beings that you sometimes see in the institutions.
Yeah. Well, we're always very happy to see when the European institutions are offering a space for young people to come in to share their voice. And one of the things that are that's envisioned by this event is also to include those voices in an institutional frame. Of course, the young people, they're discussing European politics, they're discussing their ideas, and ideally those ideas are then formulated into something that is given to the institutions, and then the institutions can do something with it or not. Depends, of course, what happens. So we were wondering, as the EU4U community, was there any outcome that you can specify of past events, basically? Did the resolutions that the young people came up with influence the European institutions somehow?
Yeah, I mean, that's, for me, one of the most important things. There's no point in gathering people and just everyone having a nice day and speaking, and then everyone goes home and nothing happens. Otherwise, save all the money, save all the effort. So the purpose is really, the most important question is, what do we do with the content after it's created? So during my vice presidency, when I've been in charge of this Your Europe, Your Say event, we've had 2 of them, and they've both been online, which was a bit disappointing because it wasn't the same dynamic. But we've run it for a number of years before that. And what we've done in the past, and every year we try to get better at it, is take the content from it and already before the event have a vision of where it's going to go. So for example, this year we'll bring the results to the European youth event that the Parliament organises and make sure parliamentarians have the outcomes. We also incorporate for the past that you asked me, we've incorporated the positions into our opinions. Our opinions are the reports that we write that are set out in the treaty, so then they become integrated into the kind of institutional system. So we have a number of different routes to do that, and we've done it before, and that's an aspect of it that we need to keep improving and keep getting better on.
Yeah. Well, you have heard it. It's going to be shared with parliamentarians. We have quite a number of parliamentarians following us as well, and we've been sharing the voices of young people directly. We've done short interviews with them. So parliamentarians, you heard it on our channel, you heard it by them. We expect you to do something with it. We hope to see the voices included. from a personal perspective, or also in your professional capacity as Vice President for Communications, what is something that you hope to see from this event?
I hope that the participants will be, like, it's a bit cheesy to say, you know, they'll be inspired or whatever, but for me, coming here from a sector where I didn't feel like I belonged here, you know, initially, that's what I hope that the participants can feel, that they can come here and go, oh my God, this alien place where I don't belong has a space for me, and I can go there and my voice is as valid as anybody else's voice. Already, even though we have a random selection process for this, but still a school has to apply in order to be in that random selection, and a young person has to be in a formal education setting to be part of the school. So because of all of that, already there's a certain level of privilege that is there by default because of the selection procedure. But the more variety and the more different voices, faces and people that we have here, the better. So okay, there's the tangible outcomes that I hope for, and I know we can keep pushing for those, and you've already thrown down the gauntlet to say we want the institutions who are the decision makers to adopt this, because we can just amplify voices, but we need the support of the other institutions. But there's something else that's harder to kind of touch, which is that feeling of bringing these big buildings and this intimidating atmosphere down to community level and show that no, there's a space here for you as well.
Yeah, picking up 2 points that you mentioned. One was the validity of voices, and the second, the intimidation that can come with these big buildings that we have surrounding us. We've been speaking to quite a number of pupils who are from EU candidate countries, so countries that are not yet part of the EU, and whatever is decided on the institutional level here does affect them indirectly, in some cases directly, but it's not their legislation that is immediately affected. And some of them were sharing with us their frustrations that their country are still not anywhere near their accession to the EU. So what do you say to those young people that, to basically show them that their presence here has a meaning, and it does have an impact in the long run that they're here? What would you like to say to those?
Yeah, I think by them coming here, they can be ambassadors when they go back home to their peers to say, look, this is something we should be part of. The people who are critical of the EU are very loud and they're very clearly heard, and sometimes they have the luxury of giving a very simple message, a very black and white message. And the reality of the benefits of the EU are not as maybe as heard as loudly as the criticisms. And the criticisms are there's often validity behind them. There's often people who are experiencing real hardship and real difficulty and feel completely disconnected and lack of trust in the institutions. And for me, that's an audience that's more important to reach than those who are always already in favour. So I think those type of students who are here and experiencing that can identify even better with people who are experiencing it of all ages back in their home countries. And they can feel that that those voices have a space in the decision making, and that there's a chance by becoming part of the EU, you can get involved and you can influence. And because, like you said, even if you're not a member of the EU, you're still being governed by a lot of the rules, you know, whether it's trade agreements or whether it's travel or certain education elements. You're still being influenced by it. We see it in Brexit now. They're seeing the reality of, okay, we still have to adhere to these regulations in a way, but we don't have a say in how they're formed anymore. So there's two sides to the accession. Of course, it's the candidate country getting everything in order to become a member, and then there's the Brussels side of it, or the EU side of it, which is we got to speed up on that end and make sure we bring them forward. So I hope by bringing students here, it can help make that link a bit stronger and make the push from both ends.
Yeah, and speaking to the people yesterday, we realized that they have a very, very deep understanding of European politics already. And I can say that at age 16, 17, I was definitely not as aware as they are about what is going on the institutional level. So I think it's important that they use their voices to signal to those in Brussels that they want to be a part of it, they understand what it means much more than some people who are born with it and who don't have to reflect on it as much. So it's important that they come to be ambassadors to both sides, to their home country, but also to the European Union. Since you were mentioning the application process earlier, I wanted to pick up on that a little. Can you walk us through the application process? How can a school be a participant of the event? Because we had quite a lot of people who are interested but said we've never heard of this before. Yeah. So what does their school need to do?
The school can just apply when the call for applications goes out. But I don't blame, a school, if they don't hear about it, they can't apply. So what we try to do here from our end to make sure more people know about it is have conversations with you, with others, to reach an audience, but also to stimulate the network of the networks that we represent. So we're here as members. We have 329 members, and one of them were appointed by our national governments, but we represent a sector back in our home countries. I represent the Irish Environmental Network. And when you add up the membership of all these sectors that our members represent, we total conservatively 91 million citizens. So that's our potential reach, but we have a tiny communication budget, we have a small team, and so to reach all of those people from a centre point of communication is really difficult. So what we need is to find other ways to reach them. So we send our members back in their home countries out to meet you and other networks in order to spread the word about it, and try and get on to journalists and people working in social media in order to spread the word as well. So we need help from others to make sure everybody knows it's an option, and then once you're aware it's an option, the application process is very simple. The selected schools are not chosen on any level of qualification. It's a random draw, and we make sure we have at least one school from every member state, and then from the candidate countries as well.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So you heard it. If you want your school to get the chance to be a member of this event or a participant of this event, just look up the event name, Your Europe, Your Say. You will find a lot of information on the website, and bring it to your teachers ideally, because I assume that they will be the ones who submit the application, and spread the word. Spread it to your friends who are in other schools, and maybe they can get their schools to apply as well, and with a bit of luck you might be participating in the next event too. Cillian, the last words belong to you. What is something that you would like to share about the event, to our EU4U community, anything in general?
I mean, from chatting to you before we started recording, I think this community is such an important thing to have in any democracy. And the fact that, you've got viewers who are engaging and exchanging information, these are the type of networks that are really where the change is going to come from. Too many of our decision-making powers are isolated. Too many of our structures, I think, are isolated and have very strict hierarchies and very strict kind of cultural divides between at what level you're allowed to engage at. And I think we need to break those down, because I worry that if we don't reform quickly and dramatically the governance structures that we have, they will fall apart in a catastrophic way, and that means pain for everybody. And we see it throughout, the long history of humankind, that civilizations reach a peak and they start to collapse, and we see that governance cycles go through different cycles as well, and you go from democracy to tyranny and it brings all sorts of oppression. So I think we're at a really risky point, without scaremongering or saying this is going to happen tomorrow. We are at a point in history where we need engagement, and these types of communities that you've helped to create and to build, this is where the kind of reasonable exchange of ideas can take place, and where different types of solutions can be offered. Yeah.
And aside from participation in events like this one, that we have quite a lot of tutorials on our Instagram page and on our other channels, where you can find out how to get in touch with people working in the institution. So if you want to make sure that our democracy is strengthened, that its institutions are protected, and that your ideas are brought to the table, please have a look at those tutorials, because they're quite easy explainers on how you can get in touch with European politics and have your voice heard. On that note, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Shamsa, for filming. And I'm excited to report about the next event as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
And look forward to talking again, perhaps.
Perfect.